The rain was coming down hard in Redridge, drenching the pavement, when 75-year-old Harold Knox lost control of his rusty motorcycle, right in front of the Rust Fang Bar, the most feared biker hangout in the region. The impact threw him to the ground with a harsh thud. Laughter burst out. Phones were pulled out to film. "Look at this! Grandpa just ate it!" yelled a man in a black jacket recording. Harold, covered in mud and pain, tried to get up, on his own. Amid the jeers, a firm voice cut through the noise. "Hold on. Are those real badges on the tank? If you believe true honor always finds its way back, keep watching." Redridge is one of those towns where time seems to slip by more slowly, between the gaps in old porch floorboards and the church bells that ring 3 times a day, even though no one really asks why. It's a small place, surrounded by thick forests and gentle hills where everyone knows each other, or at least they think they do. Mornings arrive with the scent of damp pine and wood smoke, and the steady chime of the Mount Redemption Baptist Church bells echoing through the streets. At the Main Street gas station, the waitress from Daisy's Diner starts pouring black coffee at exactly 6:15 a.m. It's the kind of town that doesn't like change and watches outsiders with narrowed eyes from behind half-closed blinds. And this is exactly where Harold Knox lives. He stays in a small wooden cabin on the northern edge of town, near the old abandoned mining road. The house always looks like it's on the verge of falling apart. Loose shingles, peeling paint, and a porch that creaks with every step. But there's a certain order in the chaos. Neatly stacked firewood, tools lined up on a rusted nail in the wall, and a small herb garden he tends himself. Harold is an average-sized man, his back bent with age, his hands telling a long story. Of labor. His blue-gray eyes seem to carry more than just memories. Every day, he follows the same routine. He leaves home around 7 a.m. on his old 1975 Yamaha XS650, a bike that rumbles more than it runs but still holds on, most of the time. He wears an open-face helmet, a worn-out brown jacket, and faded jeans with an old chain in his pocket. In town, he stops by Mrs. Mallory's market for the bare essentials: coffee, rice, maybe a can or 2 of beans. He speaks little, just enough. Most locals reply with a quick nod. Some avoid eye contact altogether. He's strange, some say. Been living alone for years, others add. One of those cranky old men, they conclude. Harold doesn't seem to mind. He doesn't argue. He doesn't explain. He just nods and walks away. Downtown, no one really knows where he came from or what he did before arriving in Redridge over 20 years ago. Some rumors say he worked at a lumber mill in Alabama, but no one knows for sure. Harold never told his story. In the evenings, Harold heads back home and sits on his porch. Sometimes he lights a cigarette. Other times, he just watches the mist rise over the field. You can't really tell if he's thinking about something, or someone. The only sound that breaks the silence is his old motorcycle, which he stubbornly keeps alive with makeshift parts, leftover engine oil, and an almost infinite supply of patience. He doesn't carry a phone, doesn't own a TV. On Sundays, he walks down to the creek near his cabin and strolls through the trees. It's a simple, solitary life. But there's a quiet kind of dignity in the way he lives, even if most people don't notice it. And on that rainy Wednesday morning when the chain on his rusted bike snapped right in front of the Rust Fang Bar, sending him into the cold, muddy pavement beneath the harshest eyes in Redridge, what they saw was just an old man, fallen, vulnerable. The rain had let up in Redridge, but the ground was still slick, covered in wet leaves and built-up mud. It was early afternoon when Harold left his cabin on his old bike. The Yamaha groaned more than it roared that day. He needed to head into town to buy a new drill bit. The lock on his cabin door had started to fail. The bike had been struggling over the last few miles. It coughed and sputtered, the exhaust rattling like a sick lung. But Harold pushed on. He crossed the wooden bridge that led to the south side of town, where the Rust Fang bar sat. It was a place he always avoided. That's where the Iron Howl gathered, the most feared biker club in the region. Most people in Red Ridge wouldn't even walk past the bar. Loud laughter and heavy music always spilled from behind its shut windows. Harold had no intention of stopping. He just wanted to pass by and keep going, but fate had other plans. As he turned the corner onto Main Street, the chain on his bike finally snapped. The sound was sharp, metal on metal. The rear wheel locked. Without balance, Harold was thrown sideways, landing hard on the muddy pavement. The bike slid a few feet and came to a stop right at the door of the Rust Fang. For a moment, time stood still. Then, the bar door swung open. 4 large men in black jackets stepped out. One held a beer bottle. Another had a phone in hand. They burst into laughter. "Damn, look at this," one of them said, pointing. "The old man ate it on his junkyard bike." "What is that thing?" "Man, straight out of a horror museum?" Another mocked, filming the whole scene. Harold, soaked in mud, tried to get up. His hands trembled slightly, not from fear, but from age. His boots sank into the sludge, and every movement made his muscles ache. But he said nothing. "Need a hand getting up, Grandpa?" sneered a red-bearded man in dark sunglasses. The laughter grew louder. More bikers stepped out to watch the show. There were about 10 of them now, standing among gleaming chrome motorcycles. "Get this on camera, Joey," one shouted. "Ancient Fossil tries to ride, and fails." Harold wiped his face with the back of his hand and knelt down silently. He picked up the broken chain and tried to fit in the makeshift piece he'd rigged weeks earlier, the same one that had now betrayed him. "Cat got your tongue, old man," one of the younger bikers mocked, spitting near him. Still. Harold didn't flinch. Not a word, not a glance. He just kept working, trying to fix his own fall with the same quiet dignity he carried through every day of his life. At that moment, the scene caught attention from across the street. On the sidewalk, an older woman carrying groceries looked over, then quickly crossed to the other side. A small gesture, but full of meaning. No one wanted to get involved. When Harold finally managed to stand holding the nearly toppled bike, another wave of laughter echoed around him. "Maybe he's drunk," someone shouted. "Nah, just old." That's when an older biker stepped out of the shadows of the bar and slowly approached Harold. His name was Mason Rourke, president of the Iron Howl. The group fell silent for a moment out of respect. Mason studied Harold's bike. Then his eyes locked on something on the gas tank. A faded sticker with a symbol that most wouldn't recognize. But Mason did. "Hold up," he muttered. "Are those real badges?" The laughter stopped. Phones were lowered. For the first time, someone was looking at Harold without mockery. The atmosphere shifted, but no one knew why. Not yet. Harold said nothing. He simply wiped the mud from his hand, turned the key, and tried to start the bike. It stalled. Again. The bike wouldn't start, not even on the third try. The sound of the engine scraped against the heavy silence now hanging in the air like thick fog. The bikers still stood around him, but the laughter had stopped. Their mocking looks had turned uncertain. Harold kept his head down. The rain that had soaked him earlier now trickled down the scratched tank of the Yamaha, where a small, time-worn insignia had started to draw attention. The club president, Mason Rourke, stepped forward slowly. He was 58, imposing, with hands like concrete blocks and a thick gray beard that gave him the look of someone who had seen more than he cared to remember. But in that moment, his eyes were fixed on the faded emblem on the left side of the tank. He knelt down and touched the stickers gently, almost reverently, and murmured, "This here. This is from the Marines, and this—" His fingers slid over a silver star. "That's a silver star!" The others began leaning in to see more clearly. Harold stayed silent. He didn't confirm it. He didn't deny it. He simply looked at Mason, eyes calm and deeply sad. Mason slowly stood up and turned to the group. "Anyone here know what it means to earn a silver star?" he asked, voice low and firm. "That's not some little pin. It's the third highest military decoration in the United States. You don't get one of these unless you're saving lives in hell." A heavy silence fell over the group. The man who had been filming Harold, a guy with long hair and a smug face named Troy, lowered his phone slowly. The mockery in his expression had vanished. Others began to take slow steps back, creating space. Harold remained still, soaked, covered in mud. That's when one of the younger bikers, Kyle Monroe, stepped forward. He was in his early 20s, restless eyes, unsure stance. He removed his helmet slowly, revealing a pale, stunned face. "Wait, what's your name?" he asked Harold, voice trembling. Harold hesitated. He looked at Kyle for a long moment, and then answered in a hoarse voice, "Knox, Harold Knox." Kyle's eyes went wide. "Oh my God." Everyone turned to him. "My brother, Chad Monroe. He served in Vietnam. He used to talk about a sergeant who saved his life during an ambush near Hue. He never forgot that name. He always said, 'If I'm alive today, it's because of Harold Knox.'" Kyle reached into his pocket and pulled out a chain he wore around his neck. He stepped forward and held it out to Harold. It was a military dog tag, his brother's. "He passed away 4 years ago, but he never stopped talking about you." Harold touched the tag with grease-stained fingers. His hand trembled, not from weakness, but from memory. His jaw tightened. For a moment his eyes welled up, but he closed them and took a deep breath. "Chad was a good man," he murmured. "Stubborn as a mule, but brave to the very end." Kyle swallowed hard. Mason turned to the group and spoke with authority. "Nobody here leaves until we make this right. No one. Got it?" Everyone nodded. The entire club mobilized. Harold was invited inside the bar and offered a dry towel and a hot cup of coffee. He hesitated at first, but nodded in acceptance. He didn't say much, but his presence said everything. For the next 3 days, the Iron Howl members worked on Harold's old bike. They stripped it down, cleaned every inch, polished the tank, replaced the engine, and gave it a fresh paint job. On the morning of the return, all 23 members of the club stood outside the bar, lined up in a semicircle, dressed in their Iron Howl vests, Harold was called. He stepped out of his cabin, guided by Kyle, who now treated him like distant family, with respect and care. When Harold arrived and saw the restored bike, it took him a moment to react. That's when Mason stepped forward, holding a black vest in his hands. It was different from the others, heavier. On the chest, hand-stitched letters spelled out Harold Knox, and on the back, the club's emblem, but in gold. Below it, a simple line, honor and courage. "Forgive us for what we did," Mason said. "What you did for this country, and for families like Kyle's, is beyond measure." Harold nodded. He took the vest with both hands, and as he put it on, the entire group did something never before seen in Red Ridge. They removed their helmets and stood in silence for a long moment, then revved their engines in unison as a salute. That afternoon, Harold was escorted home by the full club, riding in a solemn formation through town. People stopped and watched. Some took pictures. Most didn't fully understand what they were witnessing, but deep down, they felt something important had happened. Autumn arrived quietly in Red Ridge. Golden leaves began piling up along the sidewalks, and the wind blew colder, carrying with it the scent of firewood and something old and timeless. The bells of Mount Redemption Baptist Church still rang out, every Sunday, just like always. But now, something about the sound felt different. Since that day, something had changed in Red Ridge. Harold went back to his routine, riding his newly restored motorcycle. But now, every time he passed, the bar, Every member of the Iron Howl stopped what they were doing, removed their helmet, or gave him a silent nod of respect. And even those who didn't know why, learned by watching, not because he asked for it, but because they had learned the true meaning of honor. And if you also believe that true honor and courage should be valued, write honor and courage in the comments. If you enjoyed this story, click the like button and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next story, especially for you.